Welcome to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tails, your weekly livestock podcast. And as always, we're very grateful to our sponsors, Harbro, who are, of course, suppliers and manufacturers of quality livestock nutrition. On Top Lines and Tails this week, it's a special privilege because it's an area that I don't really know a great deal about. But we're talking about horses rather than cattle and sheep, and horses that have a massive input into and have done into the framework of farming in Scotland, and a great pleasure to have George Skinner on the podcast. George and his son Derek as well. Derek and I have been pals for a while. Welcome to the podcast, you guys.
Okay, hello.
George, you said you've been working with Clydesdale horses for a long time. Did you say since you left school? That'll be a while ago.
Well, it's a long time ago. There were still horses working on the farm, you see, when I left school, right. in my father's time in farming.
Sure.
But they disappeared, and there was none for about maybe 20 years, right, because of mechanisation.
Sure.
And then they came back in 85.
Okay. And just remind me just whereabouts you are there. You're Aberdeenshire, I know that.
We're at Strathorn, which is 20 miles west of Aberdeen.
Okay.
We look on to the A96,
okay,
which is the main Aberdeen Inverness road.
And I think that's somewhere near Huntly, would I be right?
Neighbour, we're close by. We're halfway between the Aberdeen and Northern Fainston market and United Auctions Huntly market.
Okay.
So, for anyone that knows that area, and where good neighbours are Neil Barclay at Hairstone, who has obviously a considerable pedigree.
Yeah. Does Neil have horses as well? He has everything else.
Nah, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
We're not convinced him to buy horses yet, but you never know.
And we're also right next but one farm are the Ingrams and the sheep enterprises. There's a lot of sheep passing our door on a daily basis.
They're going everywhere in the country. We've had Bruce Ingram on this, or Bruce or Gregor on this podcast before, and they're big sheep boys. Serious games they play.
Great guys.
Yeah.
Very, very hard working.
Uh-huh. And tell me a little bit then, so you came back in 1985, you said you got horses back in the farm there, George, and you wouldn't be working them back then, but it must have been a love of yours to get back into the breed, and was that you that started the horses then at Strathorn?
Well, they came back because we got involved in a fundraising event in the village, which previously, a long time ago, was a horse market, you see.
Okay.
So I thought it would be better to have some horses so that we kept the tradition.
Uh-huh.
And that was how they got going.
Right.
That was way back in 85.
Yeah. So you ran up to about 25 horses that you run there now?
Oh, it's a serious disease, this horse thing, because you never get less, you always get more.
That's all pedigree stock. I think that's the definitely the way. But you don't just get more; you get better ones, do you?
But we also drive. You see, there's a lot of Clydesdales being driven. We used to do a lot of weddings, but the weddings are now a thing of the past. But hiring a horse and carriage is nearly a thing of the past in the meantime, I think.
Okay.
But I've seen files we did 2 weddings a week.
Really? And it's not just one horse you put on the front of those carriages. And again, you need to correct me here because it's not my area, but you'll run quite a few horses on the front of a carriage.
It's a pair. Normally it's a pair of horses.
Okay.
They can. I mean, they're quite tough. They can climb the hills, no problem, and they can do about 10 miles per hour. They can do it at a working trot. You see.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've certainly seen them at the Highland Show. We'll go on to that in a second. But the Highland Show, when they're going in and out the ring, and that'll be one of you guys in there with teams of, quite a few on there, and then they come galloping down that hard court there, coming down from the main ring, and
that's right.
Take a bit of hanging on to, I guess.
Aye, but I mean, if they're well trained and well broken, they shouldn't be that bad. But I mean, you've got a lot of power and weight in front of you,
Mm-hmm. What sort of weight, George, are we looking at for a full-grown driving horse?
Well, it needs a big horse to be a ton.
Okay.
It needs something between 850 and 950 is a common sort of weight. Our 5-year-old gelding just now, you see, is 875. So they're just slightly less than a ton in weight, really. But if you 4 horses driving, that's 4 ton. You see.
Of course. And what sort of weight carriage would they be pulling when you're doing the exhibitions and that?
Well, the carriage is no heavy at all.
No.
The carriage, the dray that we drive, it is what is known as a mineral water dray, which would have been used, the type of vehicle, to deliver mineral water in the streets in London.
Okay.
And that's would only maybe weigh maybe nearly a ton, and then it can carry 2 ton.
Right.
So that's 3 ton in total that a pair of horses would be pulling. You see.
Okay, 2 ton pulling 3 ton. That's fair enough, but on wheels, of course. And let's go back to the beginning of this, Derek. There, you would be showing horses in hand as well. That's another side to it, I guess, is it?
Oh, we've had a good summer showing horses in hand. We've got a 5-year-old gelding who is nearly won everything when he's been out, and he also is a riding horse too. You see, that's the great thing about the Clydesdale. They're very versatile, and I mean they can drive and they can show in hand, and they're used for riding, and that is the success of the whole job, because the young people can then enjoy the Clydesdales if they can ride them, you see.
What sort of size are we looking at for you if the gelding you're winning?
Well, you're speaking of from 17 to 18 hands, which is measured from the withers, you see, right up the front leg. So their heads are standing a wee bit higher than that, really. So, you see, so
Derek's there in the background. Derek, what's that in feet and inches?
A hand is 4 inches, and it's just about the 6 feet. You see, like
that's a long way to fall off one of those, George. And I'm sure you've done that. I'm sure Derek's done it too. It'll be a long way down to the ground.
You're a long, but you see a bit once you're up there. You see a bit of the world which you never knew existed.
They always said that about driving a combine. Is like when you're up on a combine, you see the distance out there. And of course, these animals originally would have been the combine harvesters, wouldn't they, of the farming world?
Well, they were used in a binder. You see, that's what usually had 3 horses in a binder in the harvest time when they were cutting the crop with the binder, and it made the sheaves. And now the workers came behind making stooks, you see, and the grain had to dry out normally in fine weather.
The working horses, we'll stay with that for a minute. The working side of that horse, of course, down in the south, there would be shire horses, and there'll be other sorts of heavy horses as well. But in Scotland, the Clydesdale would be a little bit used to claggier, heavier land, maybe, because it'd be slightly wetter up there when you're pulling the harvest.
Well, somewhat would be, but it's nae wet, nae extremely wet. Like there's a lot of good land in Scotland that the horses were working on, you know. A good loamy sort of soil with maybe puddles of stones in it, and if you're ploughing with a pair of horse and you hit a stone, you've got to be pretty sure that you've got a good hold of the plough.
Of course, talk about the ploughing. Of course, that's where most people think of a heavy horse. Nowadays, there's still ploughing competitions, and we'll be going to that in a second. But when you're pulling the two horses would pull a plough, would they down the furrow? And
you didn't sit in the back. You got to walk behind the plough.
Okay.
Hardest day's work I think ever you'll ever do. I'd like to believe.
But if you've a good going pair of horses, it's not a difficult job, really.
And as you said, when you hit a stone, you've got to hang onto those handles pretty tight.
You've got to keep hold.
And they would have done for time forever. For the last 200-300 years, horses, of course, would have tilled all the land, and you do just about every job there on the field, from, as you said, from ploughing it over to tilling it down and planting. All that would have been done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they used to put up drills or ridges, you see, with a pair of horse. And when you was planting potatoes, the squad came and planted the potatoes in the ridge, and then the horse came along and filled them in.
Okay.
And then the toddy started to grow.
Uh-huh. I mean, what sort of usage would you have out of a horse going back the way when you took into your younger days there, George? So the horse would go out, and what sort of hours would you put a horse through and going back the way?
Well, normally it was 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. That was an 8 hour. Well, no, they usually had an hour and a half break at lunchtime.
Right. Okay. Which is better than more than most of us get these days. And would you run? Would they have run back in the day? Then would they run double horses, so they would put another one on to take over when the other one's tired out a bit?
No. Oh no! The horseman and his horses got a break of an hour and a half at lunchtime. Okay. The horseman kept his own pair of horses. You see. Mm-hmm. Okay. He had 2 horses, and he looked after that pair. And if there was more than one horseman on the farm, they each had a pair.
So you mentioned that your father ran the horses on the farm there, so you would have had a pair of horses yourself to look after as a youngster.
There was a tractor came home here in 1939, you see, so my father was beginning to get recognised by that time. Mm-hmm. An old case tractor that came across from America in a box, and they assembled the tractor 30 miles away.
Really?
And then ran it over.
Uh-huh. And the tractor, as you said, would be, of course, the downfall of the horse eventually. But I mean, the horse had been there for 200 years before that. But I mean, a lot of places carried on using horses for a lot after those tractors arrived, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But you see, there was still there. That grass sickness disease was a serious problem with horses, with work horses. I mean, while the farmer lost maybe 2 of his horses in the springtime, you see, with grass sickness. Okay. And they're still trying to find out the real cause of it.
Grass sickness, and that would be a killer, would it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. They could be lying dead within 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. So we move on to 1985, and you got involved with the Clydesdale, I suppose, and you are widely recognised as one of the top horse studs in Aberdeen, in across Scotland, I guess.
Yeah, we're pretty well known. I mean, I was president of the Clydesdale Horse Society for 2 years, you see, way back in 2006.
Right.
I enjoyed that bit, really, but there was never any bother with the horses. It was files the people.
That's like a vet will always say, there's no problem with the animals, it's the owners is the problem. And okay, that's fair comment. And the Clydesdale Horse Society covers the whole of Great Britain and Ireland, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh, it goes right Great Britain and Ireland. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of Clydesdale horses in Northern Ireland, and there's a lot of Clydesdales in Southern Ireland too, but not so many. There's a lot of good females in Northern Ireland.
Let's go on to the breeding side of it, George. There, of course, you don't just show the horses, but you'll be a breeder of the horses, and that'll be the hard thing. There'll be some great sires and stud sires that have been used over the years. Is there anything there you can remember that's probably been a big influence in the breeding?
No doubt that the Colessi cut above stallion, that's Ronnie Block, the Colessi, had this cut above stallion, which sired a lot of mares and sired a lot of foals, actually, in his time. He lived to a ripe old age, I think, of 22 years old.
Right.
And there's quite a lot of females still left in the breed, which have got cut above blood in them, you know.
Okay. And Ronnie Black, another well-known name, not just in the cattle world, but in the sheep world too, and a well-recognised breeder in Scotland. And I guess he'd be one of your oppos, would he, in the show ring?
Oh, definitely. I nearly made it in Saturday, but not quite. We were reserve champion, and Ronnie was champion.
Okay. Yeah,
and we was as near as I've ever been. It's not easy for a gelding to beat a filly.
That's probably
the females. The females also always are favoured by the judge, you know.
And you talk about judge, and of course you'll have judged a lot of shows yourself, and imagine a lot of shows and events
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah, 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 yeah. I've been in Australia judging Clydesdale, like,
Okay,
and I've never judged in America, but I've been at the 3 previous world shows,
right. And
which were held in America.
how often do they run the world shows? Is that
It should be every 4 years, but it's getting a wee bit of a hiccup while because of this COVID problem, you see.
sure? And you're judging those. Are you judging those ridden? You're judging them in hand, or on
Most of it's in hand and also driving. A lot of driving goes on at the world shows. Various mixes from single up to eight horse teams, you see.
And how would you judge a team? I've seen the teams I said earlier on, and we'll go on to the Highland maybe in a second. How would you judge a team of 6 or 8 horses running in it? Is that to do with the way the carriage is brought out and a sign writing on the side of that, or is it just about the locomotion of the horses, or is it a combination of all of those things?
It's a combination of all, but the most important thing is for the horses to have action. I mean, if you're looking at 6 horses or 8 horses, they must be all working together, but they must always have action. Okay. And action is so important. Like, okay. And it's a hind leg. It's so important in any horse, but very important in a Clydesdale horse. Like,
okay.
The hind leg is the engine of the horse. You see.
Okay. I get that, and assume if they're working and ploughing and what have you, that's where the power is, because that's where the muscle is.
That's exactly.
Okay, and what about the synchronized between them all? Is it all about to get them all trotting the same legs on the floor at the same time?
Well, it's just like everything else. It's practice and working with them that you'll get it to happen.
And that obviously is what you do and what you've done to get the success that you've had. So, how do you go about training that?
Oh, you start off as a single horse, you see, and then you'll go into a pair. And if you've a good going pair, you'll think, oh well, damn it, we could put another pair in the front, and then we'd have a 4-horse team. But they've got to be good going single horses to begin with, and then they've got to work as a pair, and then they go from there.
And George, are they born? I mean, you breed horses, obviously, and say regard to that, you've been a successful breeder of them. But are they born with those skills, or are they born with the right attributes, and then you train it into them?
It's born in them, like really. Mm-hmm. The idea to work and to show themselves. It's born in the horses, really.
So if you're buying a stud horse, or you're breeding now from stud horses, then it's all about how they move that's important, is it?
Well, the movement is so important. You know, if they're not a good mover, they're no use to me, because you know you need a horse which is a good mover.
Okay, and what about the rest of it? I see them at the Highland show. It's probably the only time I come in contact with the Clydesdales, but you see them dressing them up and hair down the back legs and the mane and the head and the carriage and the lugs and all the rest of that. That's obviously equally important as well, is it?
The feather, which is some people say the hairy feet, that is so important. And if it's 4 white legs, that's even better.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with black, but with a dark leg, not at all. There's a lot of good horses in a dark leg. Mm-hmm. But 4 white legs and plenty of hair. I mean, the whole foot should be covered with hair. You shouldn't actually see the foot. You need plenty of hair to cover the foot and plenty of feather, and what we call spat hair, which is the hair that's coming down the front of the horse's foot.
And you mentioned the white feet, 4 white feet. I mean, that must be, when an animal's working there with all that white hair down, it must be difficult to keep clean, and especially you get a bit of mud around about the place. A big job.
You've just got to be, like everything else, you've just got to be working away at it and just try and keep them as clean as possible. Look after the hair by using what they call pig oil, which is an oil you can use to keep the hair, you see.
Okay. Well,
very important, that's hair in their legs. I mean, a lot of people speak about the hairy-legged horse, but you know, they're fairly thin in the skin, you see, and so the hair is given in protection.
Ah, I get that. So, yeah, thin-skinned, and the hair is there to protect the hoof, I guess.
To protect the hoof and protect the leg, you see.
And when they're working on fairly clarty ground there, that obviously would, as a working horse, that would get fairly filled up with a bit of mud and around about there, and that's a
Oh,
good thing.
they do with that. Like, you don't have to stick a hose or a power washer when you come home and just wash them down. Like, the power washer is very handy.
It was a great invention. It's probably as good an invention as a mobile phone to a farmer. You're right, but the hoof. Let's go on to the hoof side of it. And obviously, these horses are shod, and a blacksmith is a gifted talent, isn't it? But I guess you guys would shoe your own horses, do you?
No. Oh, no. We're not allowed to do that by law. We've got to employ what they call a farrier. It used to be a blacksmith, but it's a farrier that they employ now. When he comes and shoes horses, takes off the old shoes and puts on new ones.
And would that shoe vary depending what they're doing, whether maybe they're working in the field or whether you're running up the tarmac into the Highland Show, for instance, with the shoes, different materials nowadays? It's a skilled job, isn't it?
The material would still be the same, but the shape, and then they would allow studs to be put into the shoes, so the horse get more of a grip in the tar surface, you see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and how often would the farriers be visiting you to reshoe the horses?
Depends what you're doing, but if you're doing a lot of road work, you're speaking about 6 weeks, like, and need another set of shoes.
Okay, and they wouldn't be cheap these days. Years ago, the farrier would be a...
They need a lot of money at farrier guys, like.
Good profession. It's a dying profession, isn't it? One of my friends of mine, his son has gone into being a farrier, but there's very few about these days, aren't there?
Well, that wouldn't be true now. There's more farriers studying to be farriers than there's ever been, I think, like, because it's a good paying job, you know. You only need a van and a gas heater, and you can buy the shoes, you see.
You make it sound easy there. I'm not sure it is, George. I wouldn't want to do it.
It's not an easy job. You need a short kind of back. It's not an easy job to be working with a horse. You know, if every day, like, it's not. And usually, while you get a rascal, it's a bit of a kicker. So you really got to hold on. It's a very dangerous kind too, you see, because you can get hurt very easily if a horse kicks you. Something, you see.
The farriers, are they big rugby playing types of folks, or there's a few ladies in there? There's a few female farriers these days.
Yeah, there's some female farriers, all right. Like,
as I said, a great skill and profession, and are there farriers out there, the good guys, the best of the best, or will you all just use the sort of local nearest one?
Yeah, really. I mean, it just depends. I mean, we have got a Murray McIntosh that comes to us every week. Because we have a lot of ponies too, you see, and there's something needing to be short. But I mean, usually if you pick the farrier, he knows your horses and he knows the job, you see. So you know, we get on all right with the farrier we've got.
And with a farrier coming every week, there's obviously it is a running cost, as you said. And what other costs? I suppose you're looking at feed costs. I've fed a few cattle over the years. I've never really fed a horse, but they always seem to be like they're fairly hungry creatures.
They don't need a lot of feed, provided, you know, they're good converters of haylage or grass into energy. But they maybe need some oats or some hard feed just to keep them going. But they're very easy to keep the weight on them.
And again, I suppose depends how much you're working them. And let's go on to your prowess. I've seen your horses, I think, at the Yorkshire Show and certainly the Highland Show, and you'll turn out at a lot of these shows with a dray on there, and some of those are competitions, are they? You'll won your shares at those.
Oh, I mean, well, the Highland Show is one of the best heavy horse driving shows in Britain, because you can drive every day if you went at the variant classes, you see.
And how do those classes work then? Are you because we see the horses again at the Highland, and a lot of people will say, well, we have to stop at a certain time of day because we can't cross the tracks because the heavy horses are coming through, but that sort of holds us up. But to see those, each one of those days a different class, or is that just you exhibiting them?
There's different classes every day. Like the Thursday starts off with a single horse agriculture type vehicle or a dray, and then the Friday would be the teams and the unicorns. That's 4 horses or 3 horses.
Right.
Two different classes, like.
Okay.
That's why your drinking's been interrupted, Andy, because that's 4 closers on the road.
Okay. And I've seen you, Derek, in the background. I can hear. I've seen you, Derek, running alongside the horses, and you'll have somebody running alongside. And that's a hard job as well.
Well, I mean, you should get used to it. You just have got to get on with it and do it, and that's it.
Yeah, obviously there'll be on some of these days there'll be 2 or 3 of you on there as well, and each have a job.
Well, you've always got a groom, you see, and if you've 4 horses, you've got to 2 grooms because they've got to get down once you get into the ring, and they stand with the horses because these horses, which have been accustomed to motoring on, are while never a good standing, you see.
Okay, I'm learning on the hoof here myself. Obviously, I will admit I've never got to see them being shown actually in the main ring. There's normally so much going on at the Highland Show, but I won't ask you for exacts. But I mean, you'll have won the Highland Show a few times, I guess.
Well, not just been that successful. We won agriculture with what we call a box cart, which is an original farm vehicle.
Okay.
Which is a tip cart, really. I mean, that's what the English people would call it, a tip cart, you see. And then other ones, well, the biggest problem with us, we've always got fairly young horses, you see. Okay. We didn't keep them, well, we keep some of them long, but not that long, really. But that's how it goes, like in the showing world.
But ladies' cart as well.
We kicked off the riding, you see, at the Highland Show. Okay. Way back in 2003 or 202 would have been. We put a horse and one of the light horse riding classes, which you were allowed to do. Right. And I think he came out 7th out of 14. Okay. It was an Australian girl that was riding the horse, actually. And eventually we got a dedicated riding class at the Highland Show, you see, right. Okay. Which is good, very good for the breed, Atlee.
Uh-huh. And you talk about the breed. You mentioned the Clydesdale Horse Society, and of course the breed is worldwide now, isn't it? And growing, I think, a growing membership.
I think so. Like there's a lot of Clydesdales in North America, you see. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's more Clydesdales in the Great Lakes in Chicago right up to Toronto, okay, than anywhere else in the world.
Well, the Agribition, I know, I haven't been there. The Agribition, they have a great ride there. But there would be, let me just throw a curveball in a little bit. Of course, I'm from England, Middle England originally. I'm from the Shires, and of course there's the Shire horse. So the Shire horse and the Clydesdale, let's just to our overseas listener, or to myself for this matter, just give me a little bit of a difference between the two breeds.
The Shire maybe is bigger or taller than the Clydesdales, but they have not got most of them haven't got the quality of hair that the Clydesdale has. Okay. That's one thing. You feel the hair, the feather of the Clydesdales, it's as soft as anything. Where the Shires just maybe lack a wee bit of quality there, but there's a lot of good Shires too,
They've come from different places. We've studied on this podcast before. We've studied Robert Bakewell, and I think he was the man that was sort of responsible for getting the Shire horse to where it was. And would there be somebody similar in Scotland that would be responsible from the Lanarkshire area where the Clydes come from for bringing these Clydes out making the breed?
Well, I mean, it's a gentleman from Wigtonshire, Hugh Ramsey, okay, who's one of the best drivers in the world, really. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, he admits that he cannot teach anybody how to drive. Okay. You either do it or you don't.
Okay. I think that's most driving instructors would probably say that about people that go on the roads there. But that's interesting that you say that it can't be taught. That's something that's bred into you, is it, to be able to drive?
Well, we hope that we've got the ability to train people to drive, because we do that and on the farm, really. We run Clydesdale days, and we people can practice driving.
Sure. You get youngsters in there on the farm, and there's people coming in there learning that trade all the time, is that?
That's right. That's right. It's all because of the riding world, really, that we've got people interested in doing work with the Clydesdales, and then they get started driving, and then that's them hooked, you see.
You're selling yourself short, as I said. I know you're one of the top Clydesdale men in or teams, should I say, in Scotland, if not in the world there. And there was something called the celebration of the Clydesdale. I think was it 2019 that you got involved?
2019 at the Highland Show. It was Barry Duncan and I who put that whole thing together.
Okay.
Barry Duncan, he's from Fife, and he's more a harness, what we call a harness person. But he also drives, and he's got all the old machinery, which they showed off at the Highland Show in 2019.
Okay.
And then we finished off that trip with the 4-horse drill team from Strathorn, which is 4 riding horses doing a drill, a planned drill to music.
Okay.
We did that at the Highland Show in 19.
Okay. And I think Derek had said that was called the Miller Award. Is that right?
It could be right there.
And you said horses around about the world there, in North America certainly. And you would export a few horses. Would you be breeding horses and selling them across the world?
Oh, we've exported horses. Okay, no doubt about that. Like absolutely. More to the continent, really. Italy and that kind of places that we've exported horses to, like. I think we've been lucky to export. Hopefully, we might manage to sell some of the Americans at the World Show.
Okay. And when is the World Show?
20th to the 23rd of October.
This year?
This year, next year.
And where?
Oh.
And where?
It's at P&G Live in Aberdeen, which is a big new building, which has never had a horse show in its life before.
Okay, that's brilliant.
And I've been at the 3 previous world shows as a spectator, and this is the best site of it we've got in Scotland for any world show.
And that will be televised, I guess, or a YouTube channel somewhere that people can watch that all over the world, can they?
Definitely. I would imagine so. I don't care a lot about it. I'll just have to be there and working.
Okay, you'll be there doing your bit. And you mentioned Australia before, and you've been down the World Clydesdale Show down there as well?
Yeah. You're right. The Clydesdale boys are more like the old type Scottish horse, which is not quite. The mares are about 16.2,
okay,
and the geldings might be 17 hands, but very, very well trained. The Australian horses for driving.
Okay.
I mean, they just stop and they hang a reins over the hams and they just stand there.
Brilliant. And there would be. In the modern day, we are in breeding with livestock, cattle and sheep and what have you. Is there a little bit of semen sales and embryo transfer and that sort of thing? Is that going on now in the horse?
I don't know, Blacksmith and embryo. AI is not just that successful, but it's been a reasonable success. But there's a lot of Scottish stallions, you see, are bought to go out to Australia.
Okay.
And also to America, like.
And just put them on a plane and away they go.
That's right. That's the way to do it.
And is the embryo transfer? I mean, is it regulated at the semen side of it? Is it regulated as it is in the racehorse side, where it's not allowed in the racehorse world? I don't think, is it?
No, well, Ronnie Block has now had 2 foals with an embryo, and been quite successful, I would think, but it's quite expensive.
Well, I was going to say about the expense side of it, George. I'm not really aware of what a horse costs. I mean, my sister had a few horses. Thankfully, I had 2 boys that didn't have horses. I don't know what a horse costs. But what sort of money if I wanted to go and buy myself a decent filly to breed a couple of horses from, what sort of money would I be looking at?
Somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000.
Okay. And is there places we can go to buy that? Are there sales, the regular annual sales?
Most of the business is done privately.
Okay. All right.
We never, very seldom go to sales. and people know that if they'll phone us up and have you got something to sell, and they can come and look for their own, and then we can assess the people.
You assess the buyers and to work out how much they can afford. Then it sounds like the cattle world to me.
Yeah, well, not nearly that. They've got to be able to handle the horse and look after it.
Okay.
That kind of thing. No. We just we never fall out about money at any comes.
That's fair enough. But a man from Aberdeenshire would always say that, to be fair. But you'll still want the best money you can. And no, that's interesting. And is there a record price for a Clydesdale these days? Is it big money?
It's risen a bit since the COVID come and go because people have got money to spend. Or if we continue in this situation, with everything going up in price, they might not have so much money for very long.
Yeah, you're dead right there. I think we might be heading down a recession a little bit, but no, as you said, the Clydes, the interest in the Clydes is growing. Is interest in that sort of, I suppose, the small.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I definitely like it.
And that's brilliant. And you'll be selling with 25. How many breeding mares do you keep?
Oh, we are now known as one of we're down now to two breeding mares. And have two-year-old fillies. Okay. We used to buy them in for the gelding job, the males, at a year old, but they've been maybe a wee bit more expensive than they've been. So we're maybe breeding more. But we don't breed that many because we like to see all the horses working, you see.
So you'd want to see them working before you can run them, and obviously the showing side of it is important to you. And what sort of numbers of shows do you go to? I know you said you had a big win this weekend that Derek was quite excited about. And how many shows do you get to your courses to each year?
Oh, we'd have done about 9 shows this summer, actually.
And it's a big expensive job. George, isn't it, when you go there? Because it's not just like taking the float down there. You're taking an Arctic with your carriage. It's not a cheap day out, is it?
It's very important that you're at the shows because you can meet people, and that is how you can sell your horses if you meet the people.
Yeah, that's fair comment, especially because if you don't have a national sale to go to. Then, as you said, a lot of the sale is done word of mouth, and that comes down from you meeting people, but winning the prizes as well and being out there.
Exactly. But I mean, there's no doubt like that's what I mean. If you're near the show or you're near show and you're soon forgotten about.
Same in every breed, isn't it? And I know I first met Derek a long time ago. I mentioned this a lot of times on this podcast. The Royal Smithfield show. He was down there and showing a few cattle as well. And you got a few cattle about you too. You're not just horses, are you?
Oh, it's not my department. That's Derek's department.
Okay.
I didn't get involved with them. I just have got to provide the food.
It's an expensive game, that one as well, isn't it? What are you saying, Derek? And so the youngsters in the breed now, as you mentioned earlier on, people coming there. Is there a channel within the Clydesdale Society that's encouraging youngsters into the job?
Oh, I definitely. They're encouraged. I mean, there's young handlers competitions, there are young judges competitions, and there's a stockman's competition, all for young people.
Okay.
And with more young people coming into the job, and we've seen for a lot of years, really.
But that's great to hear in the horse world that the youngsters are coming in, and you do a little bit. You're involved in a little bit of that to encourage these youngsters.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not fit to bend down and wash horses these days. The girls, it's mostly girls that's coming in, but there's male members coming too, like.
Okay. And they're coming into the job, as you said, they're coming in as farriers, and they're coming in as that's right, absolutely. But it still needs the old man to sit on the front of the dray. That's still your job, George.
I can still do that, like that.
He's still
allowed to do that.
Still allowed to do that just now, and that's absolutely brilliant. And as I said, those amongst our listeners here that have seen the Clydes at the Highland Show, we're always absolutely in awe of them and the fitness of the guys running along behind. And then you see yourself and David Walker up on the top of the dray there, just taking the cream out of it. But you'll be that you've earned your spurs to get up there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, absolutely. No, do that. Like, absolutely. But I like to see the young drivers going too,
Uh-huh.
because it's important the young people driving too.
And is Derek up to that level yet? Can you stick him on the front there and let him
Oh,
go?
well, it was Derek that won the box cart at the Highland Show.
Okay, good lad. Good lad.
Oh, he drives, and we do a lot of work for the driving for the driving for disabled, and disabled people come
Okay.
to us twice a week, and with a carriage that can take two wheelchairs
Right, brilliant. Okay.
and pulled by a Clydesdale horse. You see.
Brilliant. And would I see a lot of, I would say a lot of, but farmers that have been, older in their farming life and remember these horses. It's a bit like me as a youngster wanting a Ferrari that I drove when I was, or a tractor that I drove when I was 15, 16. Are there some of the older farmers coming back in and saying, well, I'm retiring a little bit now. We'll take a Clyde take a Clyde and have one of it.
There is but there's not that many, but they're still interested in the horses. Like, no, do with that. Like, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, George, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And as I said earlier on, it's not something I know a great deal about, but I know you're a well-respected breeder and in amongst that. So it's been superb to have you on the podcast, on Top Lines and Tails podcast, George. Thanks very much for your help.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tails, and we're very grateful to our sponsors, Harbro, for their weekly sponsorship. And why not look Harbro out? Maybe go to their website or contact your local representative and have a chat with them and see how Harbro can help you in these current slightly difficult times with a no obligation look at your own feed requirements. And also, don't forget, while you're on social media looking for Harbro, do have a look at our Top Lines and Tails Facebook page, where you'll find some more information and photographs to back up this week's episode and other episodes.